directly, and that is not inflation. There is much to talk about, but this is not the place to do it. I want to finish off by saying that there are lessons from Greece. They will use fear against progress. You must return the favor by showering them with reason, with compassion, and with even a degree of self-deprecation. You must be steadfast when the character assassination escalates beyond belief. I have experienced that, Alexis Tsipras has experienced that, we have all experienced that. Beyond that, you must always believe that, as Roosevelt said, the only thing we must fear is fear itself, and that the people out there can't be made not to fear fear. It is important that we believe it, because the saddest piece of news that I bring to you is that in Greece, we the leaders didn't believe it. The magnificent people of Greece responded to a terroristic act by the Eurogroup. And I know exactly the weight of the word that I'm using, and I'm using it purposefully. They shut down the banking system. Imagine this. Why do we have central banks? We have them to make sure that the banks stay open during difficult times. This is why central banks were created, to make sure that bank failures do not cascade into an economic recession, an economic depression. Banks are indeed the blood vessels of the economy, the payment system. And this is why we have a central bank, to keep the banks open. And what do central banks try to advocate as their raison d'etre, as their manifesto for existing? That if a bank is solvent, they will give it the liquidity that it needs, and if it isn't solvent, they will step in, resolve it, cover the deposits of depositors up to a certain level, and therefore stabilize the banking system. Now, the European Central Bank has, amongst its other remits and jobs, it has the job of supervising, looking into the books of individual banks with a view to ascertaining whether they are solvent or not. Very recently, they did such an exercise, shoddy as it was. They have to, because they have to pretend that the banks are solvent when they're not. And they came out with the conclusion that the Greek banks, all four systemic Greek banks, are perfectly solvent. Mr. Draghi was saying this to me in the Eurogroup. He was warning me against making statements about the state of the Greek economy that would force him to change his mind about the solvency of the Greek banks. And he was saying, but your banks are solvent, you have to preserve their solvency by keeping your mouth shut. I didn't keep my mouth shut very much, but nevertheless, as I said, I wasn't being paid sufficiently to lie. So, the same central bank that deemed that our banks were solvent, one day, on the 27th of June, announced to me, in the context of the Eurogroup, that they had no alternative but to close them down. They were solvent. So why are they closing them down? Do you know what the answer was? That we dared, our government dared, put an ultimatum presented to us regarding gigantic new austerity and a funding program which would add new bad debt on all bad debt. That ultimatum was given to us on a take it or leave it basis. And leave it meant we'll shut down your banks. And the phrasing in the Eurogroup was quite astonishing. I was accused of being irresponsible when I said to them that I don't have a mandate to put my signature on a new loan agreement, which I know is going to pile up new debt on our state, on our bankrupt state. And I cannot look at the Latvian, the Slovenian, the Italian, the Portuguese, the German finance minister in the eye and say to them, I'm signing this loan agreement, I think we can pay the money back. Why? Because I knew we couldn't. And they knew we couldn't. The IMF, Mrs. Lagarde was in the room. I asked her, I said, Christine, you are the head of the international organization, most capable of answering the question, is our state solvent? Is our debt sustainable? She mumbled many words, but in the end, the conclusion was, we have to look again into Greece's debt because it's not. So I was given a loan agreement. This is astonishing. You know, if I had not experienced that, you can't make it up. It's the first time in human history that you have creditors imposing upon a bankrupt debtor a huge new loan on conditions that the creditors know will ensure that the new loan and the old loan will not be repaid. And when I was put in that position, I had to say that our government has decided that because we're good Europeans, we do not want to decide ourselves, to have a rupture in here, to have a clash with you, our partners in the Euro. So we're not going to say no. And we cannot say yes either, because this would be the height of a responsibility to sign this deal, which is not viable. So we're going to do something else. We're going to put it to the Greek people in a referendum. And that was considered an act of irresponsibility, which deserved as reaction on their part the shutting down of the banks. The Greek people were being punished by having their banks closed and their access to their cash impeded. For what? For having been given by the government that they elected the right and the opportunity to pass judgment on an ultimatum. Imagine Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the banks were shut. That was the week during which we were contesting the referendum. The Holy Alliance of finance, of the media, of the Eurogroup, of Dr. Schäuble, of every powerful person, organization in the world, was weighing down upon the Greek people, threatening them with blue murder, or indeed threatening them that their banks would never open again and they will be reduced to a fourth world country. The media, by the way, the Greek media are hopelessly bankrupt, and they are kept alive by the bankrupt bankers who are kept alive by the bailout loans. Those media were beaming into people's living rooms, into their ears, in their eyes, constant propaganda that if they dared vote no, they would be destroying their land, they would be destroying their country, they would be destroying Greece. And yet these very people, on the Sunday, walked into the polling stations and gave us 62% no. And that no was a no to what? That no was a no to the fear-mongering. The way I interpreted that no was very simple. We don't want you to take us out of the Eurozone. I didn't want that either. We want an honorable agreement in the Eurozone. We want compromise, but we do not want to be compromised. And if they push us towards humiliation, and if they want to drag us through the mud, let them do their worst. That was the meaning of that 62% no. Remember, we were elected with 36% of the vote. And 62% said no, supporting our recommendation for no. But comrades, this is how I'm going to finish off, on a slightly pessimistic note, but it's a word of caution for what's happening here. The enemy is always within. The enemy is always the Ramsay McDonald's. The enemy is the fear in our ranks. Try to excise it from your hearts and from the hearts of your leaders. Thank you.